The sharp, sudden impact of my father's palm across my face didn't just leave a burning red welt on my skin, it completely severed the very last string of familial obligation I had left inside me. The grand dining room, filled with the rich aroma of a lavish Thanksgiving feast, went completely dead silent, except for the heavy, ragged breathing of a man who believed his twisted authority was absolute. He stood over me, his features contorted with an unhinged mixture of narcissistic rage and corporate desperation, demanding that I willfully destroy my own engagement so that my younger sister could inherit my fiancé. But as he raised his hand to strike me a second time, entirely oblivious to the tall, imposing figure who had just stepped quietly into the shadows of the doorway, the massive financial trap I had spent months building for this family finally snapped shut. My name is Emily John. To understand how a sacred holiday tradition degenerated into a scene of physical violence and absolute financial warfare, you have to understand the deep, dark delusion that governed my family for as long as I can remember. My father, Richard John, was the founder of John Commercial Builders, a mid-sized construction and contracting firm that survived entirely on the hard work of underpaid engineers and high-interest corporate loans. He was a man completely consumed by public perception, social status, and an unhealthy obsession with legacy. From the day we were children, he made it abundantly clear that my younger sister, Vanessa, was the undisputed golden child, the chosen successor, and the absolute center of his universe. Vanessa was a master of superficial charm. She was beautiful, intensely manipulative, and thoroughly convinced that the entire world existed solely to cater to her expensive whims. I, on the other hand, was the invisible daughter. I was the quiet, analytical overachiever who preferred structural blueprints, corporate law textbooks, and data metrics over high society cocktail parties. Because I refused to stroke my father's fragile ego or participate in Vanessa's shallow vanity games, I was treated like an expendable corporate asset. I funded my own education entirely through academic scholarships and grueling midnight shifts, eventually earning dual master's degrees in structural engineering and corporate real estate law. When I finally joined my father's firm, thinking I would earn a modicum of professional respect, I was instantly pushed into a windowless basement office. I was given the heaviest workload in the company for a mere fraction of standard market pay, tasked with quietly fixing massive engineering and financial blunders made by my father and Vanessa, while my sister was handed a vice president title and a luxury corporate vehicle for doing absolutely nothing. For 5 years, I let them believe I was weak and submissive. I wore simple, unbranded clothes when I visited them, drove a beat-up sedan, and never once corrected my father when he mocked my plain, unrefined nature in front of his wealthy country club associates. I endured their constant snide comments because I wanted to see exactly how far their arrogance would go when they thought I had no power to fight back. But behind the scenes, far away from their toxic environment, I was quietly building my own empire. Using my independent legal consulting fees and highly strategic market investments, I established a private, multi-million-dollar offshore equity fund called Aegis Holdings. I kept my true identity buried deep behind a wall of elite corporate attorneys and anonymous shell corporations, waiting for the perfect moment to step into the light. Everything shifted the day Liam Brooks entered my life. Liam was the absolute antithesis of the superficial pretenders my family constantly worshipped. He was an extraordinarily successful international real estate mogul and the sole managing partner of Brooks Global Capital, a private equity firm that held immense, unyielding influence over the city's commercial development and municipal zoning permits. He was brilliant, fiercely protective, and possessed a cold corporate reputation that made even the most powerful CEOs think twice before crossing him. We met entirely by accident at a high-level real estate law seminar where I was presenting a research paper on structural liability. Liam didn't care about shallow, high-society titles or designer labels.
He fell completely and deeply in love with my sharp intellect, my independent drive, and my quiet, unshakable integrity. When he proposed to me with a flawless, multi-carat vintage emerald ring, I felt a profound sense of genuine peace. However, the moment I brought Liam home to introduce him to my parents, my family's transactional greed went into absolute overdrive. My father didn't see a daughter who had finally found true love. He saw a golden corporate ticket that could elevate John Commercial Builders to billionaire status overnight. Vanessa's reaction was even more monstrous. Accustomed to taking every single toy, dress, and accolade that belonged to me, she immediately decided that Liam was far too elite to be paired with a plain, corporate slave like me. She began throwing herself at him with shameless desperation. She would send highly inappropriate late-night photos and suggestive text messages to Liam's corporate email line under the pathetic guise of seeking marketing alignment for the family firm. She even tried to corner him in the VIP lounges of corporate charity galas, whispering malicious lies about how I was only using him for his money. Liam, thoroughly disgusted by her transparent desperation, completely ignored her and blocked her personal number. But in the warped minds of my father and sister, they convinced themselves that Liam was secretly longing to be with the golden child and that I was simply a minor obstacle standing in the way of their family's ultimate destiny. The tension reached its absolute boiling point on Thanksgiving evening. My father had insisted on hosting the dinner at their sprawling family estate, demanding that both Liam and I attend. When I arrived, I noticed Liam was running slightly late due to an urgent international board meeting, but my father aggressively insisted that we sit down at the massive mahogany dining table anyway. The atmosphere inside the room was suffocatingly tense, the table heavily laid with roasted turkey, fine crystal, and expensive silver. I glanced over at the majestic antique wooden grandfather clock standing in the corner of the dining room. Its bright digital LED screen glowed neon blue, flashing exactly 6:30 p.m. as the heavy brass pendulum swung silently behind the glass. Halfway through the meal, the false pleasantries completely evaporated. My father abruptly set his wine glass down, his eyes locking onto mine with an icy, authoritarian glare that I knew all too well from my childhood. Without a single shred of hesitation, he laid out a monstrous ultimatum. He informed me that Vanessa's happiness and the future of the John family legacy required an immediate sacrifice. He demanded that I manufacture a fake public scandal, break off my engagement with Liam, and hand over my corporate contacts so that Vanessa could step in as Liam's new fiancé. He claimed it was the only way to save the family firm from an impending credit crisis that threatened to wipe out their entire wealth.
I sat there, looking at the people who shared my blood, feeling a cold wave of absolute detachment wash over my mind. I looked my father dead in the eye, raised my voice to a calm, steady level, and said, "No, I will never give up my life, my dignity, or the man I love for your pathetic greed." The rejection completely unhinged my father's fragile ego. He violently slammed his chair backward, stood up, and before I could even react, his hand flew across the table and slapped me hard across the left cheek. The physical force knocked my head back, leaving a burning, immediate welt on my skin. My sister Vanessa smirked, casually adjusting her heavy diamond necklace around her neck. "Stop being so stubborn, Emily," she said, her voice dripping with pure malice. "He always wanted me anyway. You were just useful to get him into our inner circle. Now step aside and let a real woman take over." My dad raised his hand again, his face purple with rage, preparing to strike me even harder to force my submission. None of them saw my fiancé standing in the doorway. Liam had quietly walked into the house using the spare key I gave him, witnessing the entire horrific exchange from the shadows of the hall. Before my father could slap me again, he stepped in.
The air in the room instantly turned sub-zero. Liam didn't shout, he didn't lose his temper. Instead, he walked forward with a terrifying, predator-like calmness that made my father's hand freeze midair. Liam gently guided me behind his broad shoulders, his eyes locking onto my father with a level of absolute, lethal authority that made the older man instantly stumble backward, his face draining of all color. "If you ever touch my fiancé again, Richard," Liam said, his voice a low, vibrating growl that shook the crystal glasses on the table, "I will ensure you spend the rest of your miserable life behind bars. But physical jail is far too merciful for what Emily and I have prepared for you tonight." Vanessa immediately tried to switch into her seductive persona, stepping forward with fake tears. "Liam, honey, please, you don't understand. Emily has been lying to you. She's holding your business hostage. My father was just trying to protect our family firm." Liam looked at Vanessa as if she were an insect. "The only thing your father has succeeded in doing is signing his own financial death warrant," Liam said coldly, pulling out a sleek, encrypted tablet from his zip jacket and placing it directly onto the Thanksgiving table. This was the new revenge twist they never saw coming. For the past 6 months, my father's construction firm had been completely bleeding cash due to Vanessa's horrific mismanagement and fraudulent corporate spending. To stay afloat, my father had secretly applied for a massive $30 million structural loan from an anonymous offshore investment entity called Aegis Holdings. What my father didn't know was that Aegis Holdings was a private wealth fund completely owned and operated by me. I had built it using my own independent real estate law settlements over the years. Because I knew exactly how corrupt my family was, the loan contract I had drafted contained an ironclad, immediate acceleration clause. If the principal borrowers engaged in any criminal activity, moral turpitude, or severe structural breaches, the entire $30 million debt would become due with exactly 0 days of notice, allowing Aegis Holdings to completely seize all collateral. Furthermore, Liam's equity firm had quietly acquired the primary mortgage on the very luxury estate we were currently standing in.
"Richard," I said, stepping out from behind Liam, my voice completely devoid of any familial warmth. "You didn't just slap your daughter tonight, you struck the absolute owner of your corporate debt. 10 minutes ago, the security cameras in this dining room streamed your physical assault directly to my legal team and the local police department. The moral turpitude and criminal assault clauses of your loan have been officially triggered." My father stared at the tablet, his hands shaking violently as he watched the live legal execution of his entire life's work. The screen displayed a red flashing notification showing that Aegis Holdings had officially foreclosed on his construction firm. Simultaneously, a notification from Liam's firm showed that the mortgage on their family estate had been revoked due to material misrepresentation of their financial liabilities. "You have exactly 24 hours to pack your clothes and vacate this property," Liam added, his face like carved granite. "The corporate vehicles, the bank accounts, the office building, everything is being seized by Emily's legal team effective at midnight. You are completely ruined." Within 10 minutes, the front gates of the estate were flooded with the flashing red and blue lights of local law enforcement. The police officers marched directly into the dining room, reviewed the clear, high-definition security footage of the assault, and placed my father in handcuffs, leading him out of his own Thanksgiving dinner in full view of his wealthy neighbors. The social and financial fallout over the next month was a masterclass in absolute poetic justice. With the firm seized and their toxic debts exposed to the public, the John family name became utterly radioactive in the business world. Vanessa's luxury lifestyle completely evaporated overnight. Without my engineering work to cover her failures, she was exposed as an incompetent fraud.
She was forced to secure a low-paying, entry-level job just to pay for a tiny, cramped apartment in a rundown part of the city, her superficial high society friends completely abandoning her. My father, facing criminal assault charges and total bankruptcy, lost the respect of every single colleague he had ever tried to impress. Meanwhile, Liam and I built a beautiful life of absolute peace, mutual respect, and immense professional growth. We focused our energy on expanding our real estate empire, surrounded by genuine, honest individuals who valued character over superficial vanity. Protecting your peace and your future requires you to understand a very deep, unyielding human truth. Never allow the people who share your blood to convince you that you owe them your sacrifice. Biological family is a privilege that must be continuously earned through love, respect, and gratitude. It is never a lifetime license for emotional manipulation or physical abuse. When toxic people try to look down on your strength while trying to steal the very life you built, do not waste your precious breath arguing with their entitlement. Simply step back into the light of your own success. Let the cold reality of their choices destroy them, and never look back at the ruins of the bridge you had to burn to save your own life. Switch off your desire for their validation. Build your empire in absolute silence, and let your undeniable success be the ultimate execution of your revenge.
The weeks that followed the Thanksgiving disaster felt like watching a slow-motion demolition of a poorly constructed tower. Without my daily engineering oversight and financial micromanagement, the remaining minor projects under John Commercial Builders completely ground to a halt. Subcontractors walked off the job sites the moment they realized the corporate bank accounts had been frozen by Aegis Holdings. The local media caught wind of the story within 48 hours, publishing front-page articles about the dramatic downfall of Richard John. The elite business peers who used to laugh at my father's arrogant jokes suddenly treated him like a social leper. His name was scrubbed from charity boards, country club registries, and upcoming corporate bids. Vanessa tried desperately to fix the situation by reaching out to some of her wealthy ex-boyfriends, begging for financial investments or a place to stay. But the moment they ran a basic background check and saw the pending multi-million-dollar fraud and foreclosure lawsuits attached to her family name, they completely ghosted her. She was forced to trade her custom designer wardrobe for a generic store uniform, spending her afternoons dealing with rude customers for minimum wage. Every single luxury asset they owned, from the imported marble statues in the foyer to the premium SUVs parked in the driveway, was systematically cataloged and auctioned off by my legal team to liquidate the outstanding debt. Meanwhile, I stood on the balcony of my new penthouse apartment, overlooking the glittering city skyline, holding a warm cup of tea and feeling absolutely no regret. The burning mark on my cheek had healed long ago, replaced by an unshakable sense of freedom. Liam walked out onto the balcony, wrapping his arms around my shoulders and pulling me close. We didn't talk about my family. They were part of a closed chapter that no longer held any power over our future. We talked about our upcoming project, a massive, sustainable tech hub in the heart of the commercial district that would employ hundreds of brilliant, hard-working engineers who actually deserve to be recognized for their talent. The ultimate lesson I learned from this ordeal is that you cannot fix people who are inherently committed to your destruction. No matter how much blood you pour into a cracked foundation, it will eventually collapse under the weight of its own rot. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop acting as the pillar holding up a house that constantly tries to crush you. When the people who are supposed to protect you decide to treat you like a bargaining chip, you have every right to take your talent, your wealth, and your love somewhere else. You don't owe anyone your misery just because you share a last name. You owe it to yourself to walk away, build a life of genuine abundance,
and let the quiet echo of your absolute success be the only answer they ever get from you again.